Ding dong! Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and I've been waiting so long to open a video like that. And I see no better time than now, as I'm looking at the 2022 professional wrestling simulation game, WWE 2K22. After the nightmare disaster that was WWE 2K20, 2K Games decided to take a year off, which ended up being 2 thanks to a little thing known to some as the Backstreet Boys reunion tour, and it wasn't until WrestleMania 37 in April of 2021 that the first clips from the next installment in the long-running WWE 2K series were shown, with no more news after that until SummerSlam in August of 2021, where it was revealed that there would be no more news until January of 2022, which was mostly true, save for one trailer in November revealing the presence of 2 new modes called My GM and My Faction. In January, the release date was set for early March, and the game has received pretty positive feedback since then, though it was nearly impossible to be a step down from 2K20.
And now Roman Reigns back onto the barricade. German Super!
And since this game doesn't have a main storyline for me to follow as I usually do, I will instead be ranking the 5 main modes: Showcase, Universe, My GM, My Faction, and My Rise, and mentioning extra features along the way as I see fit. So let's step into the ring to see if WWE 2K22 hits different and give it everything we've got! Before we get into the modes, I want to give my brief thoughts on the base gameplay. Overall, it is a vast improvement over 2K20, with each move having much better flow and the pace of the match greatly increased. However, it does have its downsides, the biggest one being that no one sells a single move. You can hit your opponent with like 3 Canadian destroyers in a row and they'll get right back to their feet like this is some indie show. This also serves to make multi-man matches a lot harder, especially ladder matches given how all the ladders are made of fucking paper. And it makes tag team matches even more insufferable than they already were in previous games. I like the additions of superstar specific combos along with blocks, breakers, and dodges, though I don't really like having to grapple an opponent to Irish whip them. I feel like it could have been kept to holding the stick in whatever direction you wanted them to go, then pressing circle. The game's presentation is also a wholesale upgrade from before, with a lot of the entrances having intangible qualities that make them feel a lot more real. Though there are a lot of timeline discrepancies, more so than usual. We have things like Sami Zayn's model being from, at the latest, April of 2020, while Brock Lesnar and Charlotte Flair's models are from August of 2021. They managed to get Brock Lesnar's beard and ponytail in the game, but not John Cena's new attire that had debuted a month before that. There's also strange commentary discrepancies, like if you do Bayley versus Sasha Banks, the commentators will refer to the match as both friendly competition and a bitter rivalry. I could go on and on about more issues like Xavier Woods not being King Woods, Isaiah Swerve not having his hit row theme, and the total lack of NXT UK representation, but we'd be here all day. No, but seriously though, why is Meiko Satomura not in the game? She's not even DLC! Okay, now we get into the game modes, starting with the obvious worst one. Number 5. Why does this mode even exist? Well, actually, it's quite simple. Greed. I think every sports game series has a mode like this now, the most prominent being Madden Ultimate Team and the many Angry Joe rants that have spawned from it. It's just a way for EA and 2K to make stupid bank off of even more stupid idiots who get addicted to gambling for virtual trading cards that don't even carry over into the next year's game. In My Faction, you get 2 teams of 4, one of men and one of women, and then use said teams, or certain members from said team, in different towers for rewards exclusive to My Faction. And yes, there are microtransactions that allow you to buy virtual currency to open more packs, and yes, they did price it specifically so that buying the cheapest option doesn't give you enough VC to buy a pack. I seriously do not get this mode. If you want to play as these wrestlers, just do it in the normal play mode. They also don't have contracts in that mode, so you can play as them an unlimited amount of times. And what's the point of trying to get better cards if you have to play all the matches yourself? You can win any match with the base cards the game provides. And the aspect of Madden Ultimate Team and all those other gambling gateways that make them so addicting isn't even here. Online. It's entirely single player, so there's no drive to customize your faction or improve it to be better than other people's. And the joke of it all is, WWE already has 2 mobile games that accomplish what this mode tries to do much better. If you want to gamble for trading cards to go up against other actual people, get WWE Supercard. And if you just want to collect virtual WWE trading cards, get WWE Top Slam. The main reason this mode sits at the bottom isn't just because it's bad, pointless, and done better in mobile games, it's because I don't want to see it get better. I want it to be removed. I don't want the WWE 2K games to become yet another victim of corporate greed and have all the development time go into the shitty gambling microtransaction mode while the modes people actually care about sit and gather dust on the shelf. Fuck my faction. It should have never been added and could very well be the beginning of the death of the WWE 2K franchise even after this revival. Number 4, brother! Fun fact, Rey Mysterio was my first ever favorite wrestler back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Then I stopped watching until 2016 when my friends got me back into it, and then it became Dean Ambrose, then The Miz, and now it's a toss-up between Miz, AJ Styles, and Matt Riddle, but we're getting off track. Showcase has been a staple of WWE 2K games for a long time now, and it's always the same. You do it once, if at all, right after the game comes out, and then never touch it again ever. This time around, it's covering some of the greatest matches from Rey Mysterio's career, and also a match with Kane, and it's fine. It's fine. It gets very repetitive very fast, and there's a lot of questionable match choices and match omissions like Rey's 2006 Royal Rumble victory and his subsequent World Heavyweight Championship win at WrestleMania in favor of a title defense against JBL in a random match on Raw against Samoa Joe. But I do like the new transitions into real footage of the matches to lead to the next gameplay section. There's really not much to say on Showcase as a whole. I don't really care either way if it's removed or improved upon, as it's very hit or miss each year depending on what the focus is. 2K19's Daniel Bryan Showcase was fun if only for the Velocity match against John Cena, and 2K20's 4 Horsewomen Showcase was fucking weak and came out too early as it is now missing the entirety of the Golden Role Models run, Becky's current run is Big Time Bex, and Sasha Banks vs Bianca Belair from WrestleMania 37. And this showcase is probably the best one from recent memory, and it serves as a more effective tutorial than the actual tutorial, sorry Drew, but it still has absolutely no replay value, unlike all the other modes. Number 3, the poster child of forgotten modes. Universe mode gets like one edition every other year, and I do not understand why. Universe mode is the most replayable mode in the game, and what keeps fans playing for the entirety of the year cycle, yet 2K is all too happy to forget it exists entirely. In Universe mode, you basically become Vince McMahon, having total control over Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and NXT UK with free reign to create or delete any show you want. You can then book any show you want with any combination of superstars, feuds, championships, tag teams, etc. I love Universe mode and have been running my own universe in my personal time that has continuity going back to 2K18, but it requires a lot of imagination on my part thanks to the lack of features and development time given. What was lost in the shitstorm that was 2K20 was the fact that 2K actually made some pretty good, albeit small, changes to the mode, allowing players to create shows with up to 14 matches, which was double what was allowed in 2K19. However, the only addition this year is Superstar mode, in which you pick one wrestler and follow whatever the infamously inconsistent Universe mode AI has them do. However, you have to play all of their matches, no simulation, and for some reason you're always in the main event. It sucks. The only nice feature is the tracked win-loss record, but people can still just play classic mode and follow one superstar. They get to simulate the matches and can easily keep track of the record themselves. As for classic mode, they removed a feature. Why? Shows can no longer have promos on them for whatever reason. My best guess is that, like advanced entrances, the promo engine was another source of a lot of 2K20's glitches, but I would have much preferred them actually fixing the things that were already in the game before adding new crap like my faction. Also, how come we can't book pay-per-views on Saturday now? Not only has WWE been putting their pay-per-views on Saturday more often now, NXT ran takeovers the Saturday before pay-per-views all the time, and WrestleMania is 2 nights now, Saturday and Sunday, so why can we only put pay-per-views on Sunday still? Universe mode has potential to be the best mode in the game, but 2K's utter refusal to acknowledge it lands it right in the middle of this list. Please, 2K.
Acknowledge me.
Hey yo, number 2. To boil down this mode into as simple of terms as I can put it, My GM is a fucking fantastic mobile game! For those unaware, GM mode was the most popular mode in the mid to late 2000s SmackDown vs. Raw games developed by THQ, in which two players could go head to head as general managers of Raw and SmackDown in an effort to draft the best roster, create the best feuds and shows, and win the most fans. The mode last appeared in 2007's SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, and fans have been begging to see it again ever since. This isn't like Madden removing features in previous games and adding them back in years later while promoting them as new features, as GM mode had been created by a completely different development studio. My GM has similar elements to GM mode. Two people are the general managers of two brands. People can now choose between Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and NXT UK, and draft a roster in an effort to put on a better show and win more fans. But there's a lot of new elements and a lot of missing ones. For what's missing, there are no specific storylines, no interference promos to mess with the other shows, no Royal Rumble, no Infinite Mode, no Money in the Bank, and like half the show, championships, and even more match types, as each show only has 3 matches that can only be singles or tag team matches. Pay-per-views get 4 and WrestleMania gets 5. As for what's added, each superstar now has a class that matches against another class, players get to choose the arena, lighting team, pyro, and advertising for each show, a social media feed that will tell you what's working and what isn't, weekly commissioner goals that, if completed, gives you a power card, and power cards, which can be used to benefit your show or hamper your opponent's show. I think this mode easily has potential to be amazing, even better than GM mode of old, but it needs a lot more. If only they didn't put dev time towards fucking my faction. The mode is a lot of fun and has a lot of replay value thanks to the different GMs you can play as, the different shows you can choose, and the choice to use the randomized draft pool or create your own. But only having 3 matches per show that can only be singles or tag team matches is lame, as well as the fact that each show only has 2 champions. One of the most fun elements of GM mode is having to balance all your champions and feuds, but that's not even a challenge here, and the online mode is sorely lacking. Xbox has no way to play it online, but Steam and PlayStation have the share play feature. So while not impossible, online also needs to become way more easily and widely accessible for the mode to reach its true potential. And that only leaves room for one more mode at number 1. Number 1. Who could have guessed that putting actual effort into an existing game mode would make it fun? My Rise is the randomly renamed My Career mode and exchanges the narrow storyline with very few delineations for a large amount of smaller stories unique to both the male and female characters, along with more differences based on what background and alignment your character has. While lacking in-depth replayability, there is certainly enough content in one run to be satisfying, as each of the 3 main brands have about 20 to 30 stories each, most of which can go different ways depending on your performances. The voice acting isn't all great and it's very obvious some of them recorded their lines over Zoom, but apparently they were given very little if at all context to their lines, so I can excuse that. There's also a minor nitpick with the characters not coming out with their title if they're in a storyline that doesn't directly involve it, which doesn't feel like a hard thing to change. I also feel like there aren't enough long-term stories, with most taking place over the course of 2 to 3 matches, but I do like that not every match has a set outcome, with slight alterations in the story based on whether or not you win them. Even with all its faults, it's a huge step up from the Mary Sue and bumbling idiot that were Red and Trey from 2K20, and the career feels a lot more realistic than Buzz from 2K19. Overall, it's a really solid mode that is a huge leap in quality from previous games, with some clear room for improvement in certain areas. And that brings us to... Well, this was a nice change of pace from the combined 3.5 hours of content created for the Batman Arkham series and all the frickin' copyright claims that came with it. I can compare WWE 2K22 to other sports games because I know as much about sports as Naughty Dog knows about creating good The Last of Us sequels. However, I can compare it to previous games in the series, which I've been doing this whole time anyway. I have played 2K17 to 2K22, and out of all of those games, I can safely say that this is the best one out of all of them. 2K17 and 2K19 were solid games with a lot to offer, but they had their fair share of weaknesses, especially when it came to replayability and lasting the whole year cycle. 2K18 was entirely just the new graphics engine that honestly didn't look as good as we all believed it did at the time, and the less said about 2K20 the better. But that doesn't mean 2K22 is perfect by any means. My faction is a cancer that needs to be eliminated immediately and should never have been put in the game, and my GM isn't nearly as good as it can be. but the positives outweigh the negatives here. My GM is still a fun time with a lot of replay value, especially if you can play it with friends. My Rise has a lot to offer, and the game itself is just great to look at and even greater to play. And the game has a plethora of gameplay sliders to adjust for those who want to make the matches feel closer to real life and not have 80 million finisher kickouts. Unless you're Johnny Gargano.
That means I kick out a lot. So that's correct.
Personally, I wish Universe mode got a lot more attention because that's where most of my time goes, but hey, there's always next year, right? Yeah, the most common coping mechanism of yearly release games. The final score for WWE 2K22 is a 7 out of 10. A revamped gameplay and graphics engine combined with fun mode renovations and additions helps pick up the slack created by a pretty outdated roster and certain modes that leave a lot to be desired. One of the biggest omissions from 2K22 is the revamped NXT 2.0 and the plethora of new stars introduced on that show. You know who one of my favorite 2.0 originals is? The made man himself, Tony D'Angelo. And when we return from this mid-season break, we take a look at what Tony's family history probably looks like. I hope to see you there.
Continue.
For those wondering, my top 10 favorite wrestlers currently are Sami Zayn, Liv Morgan, Roman Reigns, Dakota Kai, Kevin Owens, LA Knight, Matt Riddle, The Miz, AJ Styles, and Bayley. As if there's any doubt.